Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, May 4th, 2010. A Tuesday morning like any other. Suzanne Pilley, 38 years old, left her flat on Whiston Road just after 8. She caught the number 2 bus, then transferred to the number 4 on Stevenson Drive. She wore a distinctive blue-purple coat, carried a shoulder bag, and held a bottle of water. At 8:49, she stepped off the bus and began the final stretch of her journey on foot. Most mornings, Suzanne stopped at Sainsbury for breakfast. This morning was no different. She paid for her items and left, sending a text to her father. Another message went to her mother, thanking her for feeding Mercury, her cat, the night before. Suzanne had stayed with her new boyfriend, Mark. She started walking toward her office on Thistle Street. She never made it to her desk. Suzanne was known as a devoted daughter. She spoke to her parents multiple times every day. She was a loyal friend, someone who loved to laugh and enjoy life. She stayed active, attended festivals, and read constantly, participating in several local book clubs. Charity work and volunteering filled much of her time. She had married Peter Duran, a longtime friend, in Vegas in 2004. They divorced in 2008, but remained close. After that, she moved through a series of difficult relationships, but one engagement ended when her partner's cocaine problem surfaced. Another relationship turned physically abusive, but by 2010 she had found stability. She worked as a bookkeeper for Infrastructure Managers Limited, handling accounts and payroll. Her colleagues described her as exemplary, never late, never missed a day, very good at her job. When she did not arrive at work that morning, her colleagues grew concerned. They knew her too well. By afternoon, they called her parents. Everyone agreed something was wrong. At 8 that evening, Suzanne was reported missing. Nothing was missing from her flat. Cash, medication, passport, all untouched. Her bank accounts showed no activity. Her mother had fed Mercury the night before, but Suzanne had made no arrangements for further care. Leaving her cat and her pet fish was a red flag. Something had happened just before she entered her office building. This was foul play. Authorities examined 84 cameras around the area. Suzanne was easily spotted, including one small blurry image captured just seconds away from her office. But the camera placement left gaps. She did not appear again after that image. There were no cameras inside the office building. The next morning, police searched her office and her flat. They spoke to nearby businesses. The only immediate lead was a taxi that had stopped close to where Suzanne was last seen 5 minutes before her shift began. The driver had not seen anything unusual. No one had. Police worked through everyone close to Suzanne. Alibis, relationships, recent events. She had been seeing Mark and had stayed with him the night before she disappeared. He was quickly ruled out. Then investigators learned about David Gilroy. Suzanne had been involved in a year-long on-and-off affair with him. David was her co-worker, the regional operations manager for Infrastructure Managers. He had served 10 years in the Royal Navy, reaching the rank of Chief Petty Officer. But David was married with 2 children. When he temporarily separated from his wife, Andrea, he moved in with Suzanne. Their relationship was volatile, up and down, intense. Peter, Suzanne's ex-husband, said she had mentioned seeing someone, but never said who. He was surprised she would get involved with a married man. That was not like her. But Suzanne tended to commit fully to things she wanted. On May 6th, David Gilroy was questioned for 11 hours. He admitted to the affair but said it ended for good in December 2009. He had moved back home to his wife and children. He was working on his marriage. Suzanne had moved on too. Everything was over, but investigators noticed scratches on his arms and hands. They took photographs. Looking closer, they saw makeup covering some of the marks. David had been working the same day Suzanne disappeared, but colleagues said he arrived late. He seemed agitated, shaky, sweaty. His eyes were glazed, his pupils dilated. Several people noticed the scratches. A few days later, David called the police, not about Suzanne, to report a break-in. He claimed someone had broken into his house while he and his wife were asleep and stolen his phone and laptop. He said they heard a noise downstairs and found the back door broken, but the story seemed odd. Just days after Suzanne disappeared, his devices disappeared too. Why would someone only steal those 2 items when other valuables were available? Investigators had been examining Suzanne's phone data. Everything was recovered. The messages told a different story than what David had claimed. Suzanne had sent several messages ending things with him and mentioning her new boyfriend, Mark. She told a friend she felt David had gotten the hint, but she had seen him again over the weekend before she went missing. David had sent hundreds of texts to her over a few weeks, 64 in one day. On May 3rd, he called her, sent 15 texts, and left a voicemail. One text said he would always love her. After May 4th, there was nothing. Before that day, rarely an hour passed without contact from David. After May 4th, silence. Everyone who knew about their relationship described it as intense. Up and down, marked by aggressive, bullying, possessive behavior on David's part. Just before Christmas, Suzanne had changed her locks. A month before she disappeared, David had hacked into her emails, thrown her belongings out of a kitchen window, and stolen her phone. And 2 weeks after Suzanne was last seen, police announced they were treating her disappearance as a murder investigation. The next day, a search of the Argyll area was launched, spanning 400 square miles. A team of 20 investigators pored over CCTV footage from 250 cameras around the area. They reconstructed David's movements in the days before and after Suzanne went missing. He was the only person of interest. They tracked every step. David dropped his daughter off at school before taking the bus. He arrived on Thistle Street at 8:36 a.m. He logged into his computer at 8:40, then hovered around until he saw Suzanne walking to the office. He convinced her to come into the underground car park. After what police believe was a fight or heated conversation, David killed her there, likely by strangulation. He dragged her body into the stairwell. Between 9:15 and 9:20, he went into the office. This was when colleagues noticed something was off. Despite taking the bus to work, he suddenly made excuses to go home and pick up his car. Before leaving, he changed a work appointment at a school from the end of the week to the very next day. The trip would take him 130 miles away to Loch-Gilphead and rural Argyll. Then, he had been scheduled to go with a colleague, but told them not to worry. The change made no sense. After leaving work to get his car, cameras from a nearby shop showed him buying 4 cans of air freshener. He took a taxi to his mother's house. She drove him to his house. He drove back to work and made several visits to the car park, eventually moving her body to his car. That night, he attended a school concert and ate at a restaurant with his wife and children. He parked the car at home. Suzanne's body remained in the boot on his driveway. My quote. The following morning, he drove to Loch-Gilphead for the rescheduled meeting. He arrived at the school he was inspecting at 4:30 p.m. But given that he left at 11:30, there was over a 2-hour period in his journey that was unaccounted for. His fuel consumption was extremely high for the route. The same on the way back. A section that should have taken less than 40 minutes took almost 2 hours again. Somewhere during these missing 5 hours, police believe he dumped and hid Suzanne's body. On his way back to Edinburgh, he turned his phone off and briefly stopped to fill up his car with petrol. When police examined David's car, they noticed the umbrella that had been on the back shelf was now in the boot. They theorized he moved it to make room for Suzanne. Cadaver dogs identified 3 areas of interest. 1 in the parking area, 2 in the back of his Vauxhall Vectra. A strong smell of cleaning products came from the car. Forensic examination found the suspension, springs, and wheels badly damaged by traveling over rough ground. Foliage trapped underneath the wheel arches suggested he had visited a forest. A month after Suzanne was last seen, 47-year-old David Gilroy was charged with murder and breach of the peace. He was released on bail. He was also charged with assaulting his wife, Andrea, between January 2009 and May 2010, and making threats toward his 2 children. These charges would later be dropped. Another charge alleged he had assaulted a man named Scott, threatening to stab and kill him outside Suzanne's flat. David's family and wife stood by him. They claimed David had ended the relationship and tried to distance himself while rebuilding his marriage. They said Suzanne was obsessed with him. Because of his unusual route and the damage to his car, most searches for Suzanne's body focused on the Argyll Forest Park area. This was near where David had booked the random work appointment. They were looking at 400 square miles. Huge, overwhelming wilderness. Steep, dangerous terrain. Mountains. Dense forests, miles and miles of land were searched. 2 years after Suzanne disappeared, in February 2012, David went on trial for murder and attempting to defeat the ends of justice. He pleaded not guilty. He opted not to testify. The prosecution said the combination of physical evidence had particular significance. They demonstrated to the jury that David was in a jealous and possessive state of mind. His actions before and after her disappearance showed she was murdered by him. David Gilroy was deceitful and controlling. He pestered Suzanne with hundreds of messages, then killed her when she told him their affair was over. The calculated steps he took in the minutes, hours, and days after her death to cover up his crime revealed a cold and calculating personality. Andrea, David's wife, was cited as a witness but declined to give evidence. The prosecution presented all the CCTV, the car evidence, the phone records, and an expert who said the location of the scratches and marks on David's body were consistent with where someone would grab if they were being strangled and trying to get him off. By majority verdict, David Gilroy was convicted of murder and attempting to defeat the ends of justice. In a legal first, cameras were allowed to film his sentencing at the High Court in Edinburgh. It was the first time in the UK that news cameras had been permitted to film a sentencing in a criminal court for broadcast on the same day. The judge addressed David directly. Suzanne Pilley was a respected and well-liked member of staff. In May 2010, she was starting a new chapter in her personal life. That included bringing to an end her relationship with you. On the 4th of May, she set out to go to work. Then she just disappeared. The jury was satisfied on the evidence that this was because you murdered her and disposed of her body. On the charge of murder, I sentence you, as I am required by law, to life imprisonment. I am also required to order that you serve a number of years as a punishment part of the sentence. Having regard to all the circumstances, I order that you serve a punishment part of 18 years, backdated to March 13th, 2012. Suzanne's family released a statement. This day has been a long time coming, but finally Suzanne received the justice she deserved. As a family, we continue to struggle to come to terms with losing her. We have lost our daughter, but her memory lives on in everyone who knew her. Suzanne was a devoted daughter, a supportive friend, and an exemplary colleague at work. She was a proud Scot who led a full and active life. Although the trial has ended, our ordeal goes on. We hope that one day we can lay our daughter to rest. After sentencing, David moved prisons following threats from other inmates. He was left with a broken jaw. The Criminal Court of Appeal threw out his appeal. He also failed in getting his case reviewed by the UK Supreme Court. Justice had been done, but Suzanne's body was never found. The investigation never closed. David Gilroy's family said they hoped a serious miscarriage of justice would be overturned after he was finally granted a review of his case. They were shocked when the review was closed. In February 2019, Suzanne's father, Rob, passed away without ever knowing where his daughter was. Detective Chief Inspector Bob Williamson said the family had been so strong for the past 14 years. To bring Suzanne home and give her a proper funeral would be a massive thing for them. In 2024, Crime Watch released a new appeal. Suzanne's mother, Sylvia, and sister, Gail, are still fighting to keep the searches going. They hope that one day they can bring her home. It is extremely difficult not knowing where she is. She was not treated with any dignity in her death. As of now, Suzanne's remains are still missing. David still refuses to talk, but this could affect his eligibility for parole. A new bill, known as Suzanne's Law, was proposed by the Scottish government. It means that failure to reveal someone's whereabouts must be taken into account by a parole board. Retired Detective Superintendent David Swindle said the concept is simple. No body, no parole. There's been nothing like that in Scotland. Families deserve the best. If Suzanne's Law is introduced, it would make a big difference for families. Cases like this are painful enough. But when families have no idea where their loved one is, it adds another layer of despair. Suzanne's sister, Gail, said they accept that Suzanne was murdered. They believe the person responsible is in prison, but they feel they cannot say a proper goodbye until her body is found. Police Scotland will respond to any information. They are committed to bringing the family some form of closure. Their investigation can only conclude when Suzanne is found. Gail pleaded with anyone who knows something but has not come forward to search their conscience and get in touch. Not for their sake, but for Suzanne's. Please let us give her the burial and send-off she deserves.